All right, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the number one problem in America. And I think it's all connected to all the problems in America in a sense, which is that there's no room for dialogue in so many people's lives. There's no room for debate and conversation and working through things. There's a certain point where I just see so many different topics being discussed on the news and on social media and so forth, where people are really just all about their side and they're not about listening to the other side. They're not about potentially being educated on subjects. And so, when I look at politics, when I look at religion, when I look at social differences, different stances on social problems, like we're seeing with social injustice, the number one problem is the fact that people aren't willing to talk about things. They're not really, they're really just willing to talk about their side. They're really just focused on getting their message out and then shutting down anything and everything that has to do with the opposition, and again, even just the middle ground. And again, that's just to me what's making us not be able to progress and not be able to change things, is the fact that I think, at least for myself, as I've found, is that the more I listened, the more I was able to either become more assured of what I believed or change what I believed, or at the very least have an influence to where I was much more going, I was not exactly where I was at when I initially thought of a subject. And so again, that's just something that's really important. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with mental health. And again, I think that the reason why I say people are so afraid of dialogue is that they're so afraid of being wrong. And I understand that concept, because the idea of if we're wrong or even partly wrong, it takes away from certainty. And that's one thing you can see in society throughout the history of humans, is that we all want things to be exactly how we think they are. Uncertainty means that there is work to be done. That means that the unknown is out there, and people don't like that. I mean, if you look back at people discussing new ideas like the Earth being round and stuff, there was times in society where you be an outcast, where they might even execute you for thinking outside of the norm. And again, so that's one of the things why I would discourage trying to shut down any type of dialogue with any conversation, is the fact that that's the nature of that. It's an inability to accept the fact that we don't know all the facts, and that's the thing that I've learned as I've studied myself and just observed other people and read books and read history. Was it the number one thing that's consistent throughout history is a fear of the unknown, a fear of potentially being wrong. People want things set in stone, so that they can move on and deal with other things. And that's one thing I've realized throughout history, is things are constantly changing. And so it's really important to have dialogue, so that we can learn, so we can figure out our beliefs, and we can adjust those beliefs based on new information. But if we have things set in stone, then again, when things are disproved, when our beliefs are disproved, a lot of times it makes people just go into a bubble of their thought. You just today, the fact that there are people that still think the earth is flat is just a perfect example of people being terrified of thinking outside the box and realizing that, if one thing that I've learned after studying so much stuff is I don't know too much. I know a lot. I've educated myself through the years about so many different subjects, and really come a long ways with a lot of my thoughts and a lot of my beliefs in politics and religion and in life and in psychology and so forth. But that's one thing I realized, was my ability and my desire to seek the truth was more important than my desire to be right all the time. And I figured out that, if I constantly seek the truth, I'm more likely to be right. But that's one thing I realize, is whenever I'm going into a subject involving anything, it's just important to, know what you know, but also to listen. Because like I said, is that for myself, when I listen to opposition or different points of view on certain things, a lot of times it does broaden my mind, and it does influence things. And a lot of times it influences, how I think about things in other subjects, because I realize that if I was wrong about this, it's very likely I'm wrong about something else. And again, I think it's just really important to be humble when we're talking about certain things, because that's how we learn. And like I said, sometimes we learn that we are in fact right, and a lot of times we learn that we're not so right, that we're maybe in a shade of gray, we're partly right. But again, that's just one thing that constantly happens within the society and within um, all societies, is a certain level of, once we have an answer, so to speak, we like to cement it in place so that we can feel comfort. And again, too, that's just going back to parenting. That's one thing I've realized, is that that's a constant change. There's constantly things that work for so much time, but as my children get older, or as the situations around them changes, the solution for me to resolve problems and to be a guiding, protecting, educating parent changes. And so, that, like I said, I think that's the number one thing involving all of our issues and all of our, I don't say separation or division with certain subjects through our whole country, is that we just, for some reason, there's this desire to not talk. And I think it's just extremely important for people to realize that it's beneficial for everyone to be able to willing to talk. And some of us aren't as comfortable talking, and some of us aren't necessarily versed in a subject. And so I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people avoid dialogue, is that they have their belief, but they don't necessarily know how to articulate their belief, or maybe they haven't done a lot of studying on it. And I do think that is important too. Is if somebody has a belief and they can't necessarily defend that belief, there's nothing wrong with that. We all have our own skills, we have our own strengths. And just because you don't spend your lifetime studying a subject doesn't mean you're not allowed to have a valid opinion about it. But again, like I said, is if we are going to confront people and we are going to speak our piece, I do think it is important to be educated on the subject. And again too, if we are in that situation where we're discussing it, we need to be able to listen to the opposition and let the other side speak, just to be civil, just so that it's kind of that, give respect so that you receive respect mentality, rather than just having this attitude that I'm right, and so it's my duty to shut people down and to not allow them to speak non-truths. Because again, there's just so many times where I think if we were willing to sit back and listen, at the very least, it might shine a light on why people think the way they do. Again, it's not necessarily going to change your mind, but at the very least, you might realize, okay, you're just another human being. That this is, because a lot of times too, I think that's the other nature of not talking, is that we fill in the void, so to speak. We fill in what the other side thinks and why they think that way, rather than just listening to them and then realizing, oh, it's okay. It's because you never experienced this, or you experienced one event, or you never saw the other side of this religion, or, again, it's just, to me, I think that's one of the reasons why I love talking about politics and religion and philosophy and psychology and such, is that I can learn, I can help teach. And it's just one of those things where, I think that's kind of, I think that's the beauty of this country, is that we have so many diverse sources to get information from and to get answers from. And I really think that that's kind of one thing that I've discovered in life, is I feel like a lot of us have pieces to a puzzle, but none of us have all the pieces. And so I think the more and more we discuss things, the more and more we talk about our own perspective and our own experiences, the more and more we can get a stronger, more clear picture of what the answers are. But again, this all comes back to the need to discuss. But yeah, so, especially with all the big challenges that we're facing as a society, as a country, and I think just for the vast majority of the country to want to be united and to want to move forward together, I just really feel like this is a subject that we really need to look at and think about, is that if we want to actually invoke real change, then we need to look at what we need to do to accomplish that, not simply bombard people with our ideas and with our beliefs and with our facts, but listen to their side again. Yeah, so just hope I believe we will get there. But as always, good luck and good night.